Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Brooke Mitchell, and today's webinar is Pride of East Africa, Exploring Kenya and Tanzania, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Joe Charleson. Thank you so much for being here today, Joe. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Brooke, for that introduction, and welcome everybody to the webinar. Great. So I'm having a little bit of a technical hitch here, Brooke. All of a sudden, I'm not able to move forward on my slides, and apologies to everybody for that. Hopefully, I'll be able to sort that out.
Okay. That's okay. We can have a few moments while
No,
you sort it out.
it seems to have come back. So there you are. If you can see a picture of a chap standing next to some rhinoceros, then I've made it work. So
Yes, we
once
see
again,
that.
welcome
You're
everybody.
good.
Super, thanks so much. So yeah, my name is Joe Charleson. I'm talking to you today from Tanzania, out in East Africa. So good morning or afternoon for you. It's very much in the evening for us here. I've been working as an expedition leader with Natural Habitat for about 17 years. I'm based out in Kenya. My home is in Nairobi, where I live with my family. And I've been leading safaris for NatHab in Kenya, Tanzania, and other countries for several years now. So yes, I'm looking forward to chatting to you this evening about our Pride of East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania safaris. Just a little bit about this image here. We'll touch on this a little bit later, but I'm actually standing next to two of the remaining northern white rhinos in the world, which are one of the animals we get to see on this trip. Now, many of you will be thinking about coming to Africa for the first time and might be wondering why East Africa. So just a little something on what I love about my homeland that I hope would encourage you to come and visit us. First of all is our amazing landscapes and wildlife. If you think of East Africa, you think of great big open savannas, and here we have a rather impressive male lion on the plains of the Maasai Mara. But East Africa is extremely varied. In addition to these great big open grasslands, we also have volcanic highlands. This is the Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania, another spot that we visit, a nice little view down into the crater from the rim. And there's a huge amount of other different habitats that we have, ranging from near desert environments to upland forests, which make it give it a great deal of interest to visit. So beautiful landscapes, beautiful country, and also amazing people that live here. This is a photograph taken near Mount Kilimanjaro of some Maasai from the Kisongo subclan. These are one of almost 50 tribal groups that we have in Kenya. Nomadic pastoralist people, and a lot of our safari here goes through land that is lived in by the Maasai, and we get to encounter them and spend some time and learn about their culture during the trip. One of the main things that everybody gets excited about and is a big draw to East Africa is the great wildebeest migration. Here we've just got a little snippet of the 1.5 million wildebeest and other animals that move around on the plains of the Mara Serengeti ecosystem throughout the year. They're accompanied by about 400,000 zebra and a good number of other gazelles and other antelope. So making it one of the most interesting and largest movements of mammals on Earth. And our Pride of East Africa trip, one of the highlights is, witnessing the migration in whichever part of its movement it's in. So our safari broadly follows one itinerary. We have a mix of the best safari areas in Kenya and Tanzania. The trip starts in Nairobi in Kenya and finishes 2 weeks later, 14 days later, in Arusha in Tanzania. We visit 2 destinations in Kenya, which are after Nairobi, which are Old Pejeta, a conservancy on the equator near Mount Kenya, close to the Central Highlands, which is a rhinoceros conservancy, before going down to the Maasai Mara. And then from there we hop over the border into the Serengeti, where we go to 2 different locations, followed by the Ngorongoro crater, and then back into Arusha at the end. As you can see from the screen here, I've got 2 maps up because we have slightly different itineraries depending on what time of year it is. The variation in these is based around where the migration is. So from June to October, the migrating herds are in the northern Serengeti and the Maasai Mara. And so in the Serengeti, we spend time in the northern Serengeti and then central. Between December and March, the herds are at the opposite ends, so in the southern Serengeti, and there we visit the central and southern Serengeti. So there's slight differences in some of the transportation as well. You can see from the map the different colored arrows. So in Kenya, we're flying between all of our destinations. We fly across into Tanzania. I'll give you a bit more information on that later on. And then in our June to October trips, we have a couple more flights in there because we're still traveling over quite big distances. But December to March, because we're going from central through southern Serengeti and into the Ngorongoro Highlands, we're actually doing that in our safari vehicles and finally going on into Arusha. So this trip really does sort of pick up some, as I said, some of the best safari areas in both countries. We'll expose you to some of the sort of densest wildlife populations in those areas, and also a good variety as well. Across the trip as well, we're moving from the grassy plains of the Serengeti and the Maasai Mara through some of the Laikipia Plateau area in Kenya, where Old Pejeta is, the highlands as well in Ngorongoro. So there's a great variety in terms of the bird life as well that we'll see. And it really is a great introduction to East Africa for those who haven't been there. And for those who have visited before, it will probably touch on some favorite areas that you might have seen in the past, perhaps now at a different time of year, as well as introducing you to some new areas as well. So as we look about this and think about preparing for trips, one of the things that people always ask about is, what do we bring? We're going to fly halfway around the world, and it's always a bit of a challenge to think about, what are you going to bring with you to come on safari? Now, when you're dealing with your adventure specialists, they'll be giving you, lots of information, packing lists and so forth. But just as a general thing, we're traveling as a group. We're using light aircraft to get between areas, so there is a little bit of a limitation on the baggage. What we recommend is that people carry soft-sided bags. You can see a photo of one of the great nat bags from the gear store there. It is possible also to utilize one of a bag that has one hard side and wheels to make it easier to carry, but the rest of the bag should be soft so that we can get it into the pods underneath aircraft or into the back of the vehicle. It's also great to have a backpack with you as well, a day pack in which you can keep all of your stuff. And you'll see there on the top right of the screen a reusable water bottle, which NAHAB will provide you with. We don't use any disposable plastic bottles on any of our safaris. I'll go through some of the clothing shortly, but you'll see from here that we've obviously got a jacket in the side. There's a range of temperatures you'll have to deal with, and more on that in a mo. You also need to be ready for very hot weather, the sun on the equator, so hats, sunglasses, sunscreen, as you can see. Please don't forget to bring your cameras and your binoculars. When we're out on our game drives, we do have quite a bit of action close to the car, but sometimes in order not to disturb things, we need to use binoculars, see a little bit further off, and also to give you more detail of what you're seeing as well. If you've got any prescription meds or favorite remedies, they're good to bring along, a headlight or a flashlight. a plug adapter for your for the things you need to recharge. Out in East Africa, we use 3 square pin plugs, similar to what they have, or identical to what they have in the United Kingdom. And most of the camps will have multi-plugs that will accept American plugs, but it's always handy to have a UK-style plug adapter as well. What not to bring on safari? Disposable plastic bags are actually banned in Kenya and not allowed to be taken into all of our conservation areas or national parks. Things like hair dryers and other high wattage appliances won't work in the camps where we're running on solar systems. You'll need to have, in terms of footwear, probably a decent pair of shoes that you can walk in, either walking shoes or trainers, and then another pair of shoes or sports sandals to be comfortable in. As I said, your adventure specialist can help you with all sorts of these details. They'll be in the briefing booklet that you'll get as well. If you have any extensions, perhaps on going to Uganda as well, if you're doing visiting there, there'll be some different requirements. You need to check with your adventure specialist on that. Coming back to a little bit more detail on clothing, here's a photograph of one of our recent groups that was visiting the Ngorongoro Highlands. There's Isaac, our expedition leader, in the middle, and the group of happy guests at a viewpoint over the crater. So as you can see from the photo here, everybody's dressed, casual and comfortable. We have, cool mornings and warm days. So, how things start up in the morning, you might want to wear layers that you can sort of peel off as it gets hotter and then put them back on again as things cool off in the evening. And we want to wear neutral colors, want to blend in with the bush. So avoid any sort of bright colors. You may also want to avoid sort of dark blue and black, as they do attract some biting flies, which you're unlikely to encounter many of on this trip, but just to bear that in mind. In terms of the weather, the June to October time is our dry season, so it's typically dry. It can be quite cool, but yeah, even in the dry season, we still get rain in certain areas, so you just need to be prepared for some adverse weather as well. December to March is our green season. There's a much higher chance of rain, but that renders the whole landscape beautiful emerald green. It looks absolutely lush and rejuvenated, so it's a great time to visit, and it's also got warmer weather. The areas that you'll be visiting on this safari, on our Pride of East Africa, range between about 4,000, 8,000 feet in elevation, which is quite a big range. So especially if you're up at the higher altitudes, for example, traveling up around the Ngorongoro crater rim, it can get quite cool, and sometimes the nights can drop below 50 degrees quite easily. Daytime weather is typically between 55 and 90. I know that's quite a big range, but often very sort of around a very comfortable sort of 75 degrees. And as you'll see a little bit later on when I show you some photographs of our safari vehicles, you're always protected, by shade when we're out in the midday sun and we're out game viewing. As I mentioned, this safari starts in Nairobi. I've got a photograph here of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, named after our first president. JKIA, as we call it, is it's had a bit of a refurb recently, so anybody who's visited a long time ago might look a little bit different. It's a relatively easy area to navigate, and well signposted and so forth. But one of the things that we do is that, as we recognize when everybody's arriving, it's often at the end of quite long travel through Europe often, and people are quite tired. So we have actually one of our representatives in the airport actually meet you as you're coming off the aircraft. They meet after you come in and you go through just the sort of port health, which is an area that you walk through, and you'll find somebody there who will meet you and assist you through the rest of the process. It's quite handy sometimes if you have a NatHab hat on or something like that to help recognize, but you should also they will make themselves known to you as well, and they assist you through the customs and immigration process and through baggage collection as well. And on the off chance that some bags are lost by airlines on the way, they also assist in bringing those back, reuniting with you those as quickly as we possibly can. Once you get out of the airport, you then meet our team on the ground. I've got a photograph here of Nai, who's actually part of our team here in Arusha. But Nai, Mary, and Jackie are the ones who will be there at the airport to meet you, and they'll pop you into one of our transfer vehicles. We've got a couple of different options that you see on the left side that will take you on through to the House of Wayne, which is our first stop in Nairobi. So transfer from Nairobi Airport back into the Karen area of the city, the Karen suburb where House of Wayne is located. The Karen is named after Karen Blixen of Out of Africa fame. It's probably about half an hour or so, maybe can stretch up to 40 minutes in traffic. And our first stop is the House of Wayne, which is a very nice little guest house set in lovely leafy suburbs of Nairobi. A very, very comfortable place to settle in, get over jet lag. A lot of guests like to come and spend an extra day here. And also, good opportunity, of course, to meet the rest of the folks in your group and your expedition leader for your welcome dinner on the first night, which is held here at the House of Wayne. Following morning, it's off into the bush, transferred back to Wilson Airport, and then flying off into the bush, and then off into our camps. So I think what I'll do first is just give you a little bit of info on the safari camps that we use, and then we can chat about some of the transportation we're using and the activities we're doing on safari. So our safari camps in East Africa are quite varied, but they all are sort of traditional tented camps. We choose sort of remote locations for all of our camps. And then they're all slightly different designs, but essentially quite small and therefore exclusive use of our guests. So we have, in this trip, we have 4 different camps, which are in Old Pejeta, and then going down into Maasai Mara, and then 2 camps in the Serengeti. And so we've got some different examples of different style tents here. So there are 3 tents which are actually bedrooms, which are the top left, bottom left, and top right in the 3 of the camps. And then in the bottom right there, we have what we call our mess tent, our lounge and dining tent, which is at the Mara East camp in the Maasai Mara. So within the bedrooms, you can see that they're all sort of very comfortably appointed. Some of our camps are completely movable. So in the very top left, that is a mobile camp. This camp is put in for our guests for their stay, and then once the last guests leave, the camp is all broken down and taken away. So everything in that camp sort of packs away that we can load up into a large truck and drive off to the next safari destination we're going to. Some of our camps are seasonal. So in the top right is our migration camp, which moves between the northern Serengeti and southern Serengeti. So once we have it in place, it stays in each location for between 4 and 6 months. But again, when we leave, we pick up everything, we take it all away with us. So these camps are not permanent, but we still have made them sort of very, very comfortable. All of our tents are insect proof. You can see there's a lot of netting on the windows there, so they can be zipped down. It keeps all the insects out. Our team will come through every evening and just spray a little bit of bug spray and just make sure that they are all nice and clean and tidy. Often we keep our tents open during the daytime. I mean, certainly just to keep things a little bit cooler on those hot days, just to let the wind come through. But then at night time you can zip them down, the nets come down, and then there's also a roll of canvas on the outside, so you can be completely enclosed. Nobody can see into your tent at night. All the tents have got lighting in there. In our mobile camp, we don't have we have solar lighting, but not necessarily charging points in the tents. But all the other camps do have that, and we're able to provide all of those. The other 2 tents you see in the bottom there, the one is Mara East in the bottom left. and then the bottom right is our Serengeti East Camp as well. So all slightly different designs, but very, very comfortable. The tents are all either twin or double occupancy, and in some cases we are able to also fit a third bed in as well if there's a need for triple rooms. In the central areas of all these camps are again all slightly different, and we've got a variety of photographs here, but you can see that they're all careful, very sort of comfortably appointed. The one in the bottom left is our mobile camp, which is the one that we're using up in Old Pejeta, and that's a little bit less permanent. But you can see that the others there have all got slightly more established furnishings and so forth. There's lounge, there's dining sections. You can see a well-stocked bar there with your favourite tipples, and so I think everybody is well, looked after in the camps. There's ample room for guests to sit both inside and outside. If you look in the top left photograph there, that's from the lounge at Mara East, and you can see the fireplace outside, often sitting around the campfire. But if the weather's a little bit inclement, then there's ample room inside for everybody to sit as well. We often get asked sort of about the bathroom facilities. So this is an example of one of our bathrooms here. So all of our toilets and showers are inside of the tent. We have flushing toilets in all of the camps, and then the showers, there's running water inside of there. We have some have piped water through heaters that come into the tents. Others have got what we call a safari bucket shower, where a large 20-litre bucket of water is hoisted up on the outside of the tent, and then you have a little lever system to let that in, which is what you can see in the photograph on the right-hand side there. But just to reiterate, all of the bathrooms are inside, all very, very well lit, yeah, so there's no having to leave the tents in the night time, to go out and utilize the restroom. In all of our camps, they're all looked after by a great staff, many of whom have been with us for many years. So you can see here it's Mara East Camp, and we've got a mix of staff from different parts of the country, but a good number from the local community, which are Maasai, including some of the ladies as well. And so a great opportunity to meet a fantastic group of folks who are looking after you. So that's some of our camps that you'll be coming through. In addition to the camps on this trip, once you've gone through Old Pejeta and Maasai Mara, the 2 stops in the Serengeti, our final stop is near the Ngorongoro Highlands, and this is a photograph of Plantation Lodge, which is in a little farming town just on the edge of the Ngorongoro Highlands called Karatu. This is a really nice little lodge, a lovely place to finish up for your last couple of days in the crater, and very, very nice and comfortable after all of the time in the camps as well. So just finishing off on the sort of accommodations here, mentioned the campfire of an evening. This is in one of our camps. We always have a fire every night, and it's wonderful just to sit out there, listen to the sounds of the bush at night, watch the African sky above, all the amazing stars, and just share stories with your expedition leader and fellow travelers of the great things you've seen during the day, and the anticipation of the day to come. So mentioned getting around earlier. We've got a photograph here of a Cessna caravan taking off on a dirt airstrip. So as you'll recall from the map, throughout Kenya, all of our transfers between the camps are in aircraft, typically like this. We do sometimes have slightly larger aircraft as well, including some twin-engine ones. But the Cessna Caravan is the aircraft of choice on these dirt runways that we have. We fly out of Nairobi's Wilson Airport, which is one of the busiest light aircraft airports. Our flights, typically flying time is in the region of sort of 45 minutes to about an hour for all of the flights. But these flights do sometimes stop at one or two airstrips on the way, and we actually don't know until the day before the flights take off exactly what routing they're going to take. But that does give you an opportunity to see some of East Africa from the air, which is often very interesting. We fly right across the Great Rift Valley on our flight between Old Pejeta and the Maasai Mara, which is a beautiful flight. And you're flying over the Rift Valley lakes and some of the farming areas before you come up over the escarpment on the western side and down into the Mara. So it makes it very, very sort of interesting in that regard. And yeah, so these aircrafts will take us around. You can see the little section at the bottom there is where the luggage is held, which is why we need those soft-sided bags. Once we get out into the bush, we get into our safari vehicles. And here's an example of two of our safari vehicles waiting at an airstrip in Mara, ready for guests to come in. You can see that they are, rugged Toyota Land Cruisers. These vehicles will go anywhere. We have open sides for, for the best sort of game viewing opportunities. Each vehicle will seat our local driver guides, have 6 guests maximum in them. And then our expedition leader usually moves backwards and forwards between different vehicles, just to make sure that everybody gets a chance to spend time with the expedition leader on the trip. The seating in the back is tiered. Vehicles are nice and high so that you can see out, and great view around. Wonderful for taking photographs out of as well. And there's the canvas roof, which protects you from the sun, and if we have any inclement weather as well from the rain. And there are roll downs on the sides if we get any particularly bad weather, and that windscreen on the front pops up as well if we need that. Typically in East Africa, our rain builds, it comes in the afternoon, often in quite spectacular little showers when it arrives. So you can be out on a game drive, a storm will come through, and you might just wait that out for half an hour or so before being able to carry on your activities. Sometimes we do have longer, more sort of prolonged rain during the day, but that's rare, and we're still able to get out there and game view anyway. If we're in those sort of conditions, we'll have ponchos in the back of the car. We also have blankets in case it gets it's a little bit cold as well. Vehicles are all equipped with fridges. You can't really see, but it's in the back of the vehicle between the back 2 seats, and that's got a selection of cold drinks there. You can see some of the cold drinks on the table. And then underneath there's space for our picnic hampers, so we're carrying tea and coffee and things like that. So we always have snacks and refreshments available. And the vehicles all have charging points as well, so you can actually charge your electrical appliances. You can give your camera battery a bit of a top up on the way if you're enthusiastically taking pictures as we're going along. All of our guides have got their guidebooks and maps and so forth in the vehicles as well. And we also have bean bags and monopods there for photographers. So they do make great vehicles from which to view wildlife, and you can see here we've got one of our vehicles moving through a herd of wildebeest in the Mara, and you can just see how much room guests have in those cars, how easy it is to see out, not only on the sides but also out of the front as well. And so yeah, so in this vehicle we actually, because we've got only 4 guests there with our driver guide and expedition leader, we've also got a spotter from camp in the back, just to help in looking out for wildlife as well, to assist with finding game. So in terms of a typical day on safari, once you get out into the bush, we usually have an early wake-up call with tea and coffee. Then we get going on an early morning game drive. We'll often take breakfast out with us, and then either come back into camp, sometimes have a picnic lunch out. There's usually, if you've come back to camp for lunch, there's usually then an activity again in the afternoon, and then we'll often stop somewhere for sundowners, or come back into camp for sundowners, which is evening cocktails, for sitting around the campfire, dinner, and off to bed. So here we've got an early morning coffee being delivered across to the room. In terms of the food that we have available, we're typically serving, we like to serve a lot of fresh food. It's typically quite a sort of, I would say, a sort of a European or, and in some ways, American cuisine. So a lot of dishes you'd recognise. But we do also like to throw in some local East African food as well, and that varies in the different areas that we're going into. We are lucky that here on the equator we're able to grow lots of delicious fruits and vegetables, and we like to provide as many of those as we can in the camps. So our breakfasts are, usually fruit, toast, cereals, often cooked breakfast, whether that's served in camp or taken out on a picnic. Lunches, we like to do a buffet with lots of salad so that people can help themselves to as much as they like. And then dinners are typically served in the dining tent at night. Throughout the day in the safari vehicles, there's always snacks available, whether that's fruit or little granola bars or chips or some such thing, or nuts and so on. And then in the camps, we've also got food available and little snacks available. So there's lots and lots of variety. There's always food available. So you definitely won't get hungry along the way. Our teams have got very, very good at figuring out how much to prepare and how to then reuse any food that might be left over. So we're very conscious of food waste and making sure we don't have too much. We do like to vary where we eat. So here we've got a group that are out in the bush, and they've just stopped for a bush breakfast out in the northern Serengeti. So that's an option, and pretty much everybody who's coming will have 2 or 3 breakfasts out. And in the evenings, we'll often set up dinners outside as well. So this is dinner sort of set up around the campfire in Serengeti East Camp, rather than eating inside the dining tent in the background. And everybody sits around there. We have lanterns set up all around, and it's beautiful at night time. So in terms of the activities that we have on safari, obviously game drives are a big part of that. Here's one of our open land cruisers in the southern Serengeti. You can see how lush and green it is. This is in the woodland on the edge of the open plains in the Ndutu area. And the team has managed to find themselves a cheetah here, which they're enjoying, and they've actually followed this cheetah for the whole morning, waiting to see if she's going to make a kill. In this particular area, we're allowed to drive the vehicles off-road, and that's actually something in more remote areas that we go to that we are allowed to do, and we are permitted to do in some places. That's great because it gives us an opportunity of getting a little bit closer. We never crowd in on animals. If one gets too close to them, it actually scares them off. So it's always best to keep a little bit of a distance, and it allows them to go about their business more readily. So a lot of our activities are done in these vehicles, obviously, because that's the best way of seeing wildlife. Mentioned the migration earlier. So this is actually taken in the Maasai Mara, in an area that a fire has swept through. And you can see that then a fresh regrowth has come, and that's brought in massive herds of wildebeest. Getting in amongst these herds, witnessing the migration, is something that we try and hit at whatever time of year that we are out there. The herds are always somewhere, and our camps are located so that that we should be able to see where they are. And of course, nature is nature. It's works to its own schedule, and if there are local factors like sudden rainfall in a different area or fires that bring up a fresh regrowth, then that can cause wildlife to the animals to move around. The two sort of highlights that we have in the year is in the December to March period is when the wildebeest are all down on the short grass plains of the southern Serengeti, and that's when the females all give birth. So usually in some point in February, usually mid-February, there's several 100,000 young wildebeest suddenly appear on the plains, and there's a cacophony of mothers and youngsters all running around, and the predators all get excited about that. Out in the at the other end of the year, it's in the sort of June to October period. The wildebeest are moving around in the sort of northern Serengeti and the Maasai Mara, and that's when they're near the Mara River, which is pictured here. And at those times, the wildebeest are either moving north towards the Mara or back down south again into the Serengeti, and they do cross the river. And if we are able to witness some of that, then of course we do that as well. There is a great chance of seeing the big five on this safari. So this is up on Old Pejeta Conservancy. There's Ken with a group out on a trip, and they've got a nice black rhino here that they've just been following. So rhinos are very endangered. We have some areas in particularly in Kenya, where they're very well protected, and Old Pejeta Conservancy is one of those. You typically get very good sightings of both black and white rhinoceros, and so this is one of the big five that we see. Another here is lion, of course. This photograph was taken in the koppies of the Central Eastern Serengeti, so near our Serengeti East camp. Koppies are the rocky outcroppings in the middle of the plains. And lions will often use those as an area to sit up on, survey the plains, rest on, and so forth. Also amongst the big five, we've got the leopard here. Very good chance of coming across these on the trip. They are elusive animals, but our guides are quite good at searching them out. My big five is then rounded off with elephant, which I've got pictured here. This is a nice female moving through a lovely stand of fever trees in the eastern Serengeti, and buffalo, which I've actually not put a photograph of here for you. But it's not just the wildebeest and the big five that we're seeing. There is a good other variety of animals as well. We've got hippopotamus in our water bodies, whether it's in the Mara River that the wildebeest are crossing, or in the Ngorongoro crater, or other different water holes that we have along the way. Crocodiles as well. In addition to the main, predators, we've got scavengers as well. Got a spotted hyena pictured here, along with a gaggle of different vultures feeding on a zebra carcass. I call hyenas scavengers. They do hunt as well. But yes, one gets to see a sort of a great variety of these and gets to see some great interactions between these different species. It's not all about just the mammals that we have. We've also got some great bird life. There's nearly 1,400, 1,385, I think, species of birds seen in Kenya and northern Tanzania, including the lilac-breasted roller here. And carmine bee-eaters as well. So lots of different birds that can be seen along the way. So we've spoken about on game drives, that's the best way to see animals, but it's we do more than just sort of day game drives. We do have quite a big focus on conservation activities as well, and this is up in Old Pejeta. This is one of those remaining northern white rhinos. There are two females that they've got up on Old Pejeta Conservancy. They are in the process of they've collected eggs from them. Neither of these two females, which are related, can actually carry their own offspring, but they are a subspecies of white rhinoceros. So southern white rhinos are able to carry those, and they're actually attempting to implant some of the southern white rhino females and try and bring these northern whites back. So there'll be surrogate mothers for them, and we go and visit them, hear the whole story about these northern white rhinoceros up in Old Pejeta, which is it's fascinating, and it's a very humbling experience to be there amongst right next to the two remaining members of a subspecies. We've spoken about game drives. We do night game drives in certain areas. We can do that in Old Pejeta and in Mara East. That's actually one of the better times to be able to see predators being active, especially if we've got very, very hot days. In the cool of the evening, they head out. We've got a leopard moving around at night, just walking around the edge of the territory, and following these animals in the vehicles with a spotlight gives us a chance to see them, as well as nocturnal animals that we obviously wouldn't be seeing during the daytime as well. Things like bush babies, genet cats, aardvark, and so forth. All very, very interesting. We do like to get out of the vehicles when we can. So this is some guests heading out on a walking safari out over on the plains of Pejeta there. We're being accompanied there by a gentleman called Bogo, who is one of the local rangers from the Conservancy there. These walks they're certainly not force marched, but one does need to be able to comfortably be able to walk 3 to 5 kilometers over a period of 2 to 3 hours. It gives an opportunity to see things that you'd miss from the vehicles. Things like insects, little nests, tracks and signs of the animals that are passing. It's fascinating going out on walking safaris. Do have the opportunity to take to the skies in a different way as well. There are balloon safaris on offer. Typically, we're doing these in the Serengeti. It does mean an early start. The balloons take off actually pre-dawn and very, very first light. The idea being that you're up in the air as the sun rises over the plains. You get beautiful colours. And the flights typically last about an hour. And when you land on the other end, they set up a lovely bush breakfast, often frying pancakes over the burners of the balloon and so forth. It's all great fun. But as I said, it is an early start. Sometimes we need to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning in order to be able to get over to the launch site, and depending on exactly where that is. And then rejoin the group a little bit later in the day. I'd mentioned the local Maasai community as well. We do spend time with them. We get an opportunity to listen to members of the local community talking about their culture, about their interaction with wildlife and how they live alongside it, visiting their villages. And also they'll often come into camp, and here we are of an evening for sundowners around the fire with a little bit of a Maasai dance to see us off. So I've come to the end of my presentation now. I hope this gives you an idea what our Pride of East Africa safari is all about. And I would be very happy to take any questions as well.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for that wonderful and thorough presentation. And I will say, as somebody who's been to Ndutu, that it is pure magic there. So very excited that you mentioned that beautiful area as well. So let's see here. We have lots of questions that have already come in, and everybody, for the next about 15-ish minutes or so, we will take questions. And in your control panel, there is a question section. So just go ahead and put your thoughts in there, and we will get through as many as we can. So let's see here. So if anybody is a birder and they would like to maybe bring a birding book, do you have any recommendations?
Yes, we do. There are a couple of different books. There's one by Stevenson and Fanshawe, and there's I'm having a mental block on the name of it now. It's my own bird book. There's a lovely book of actually birds of the whole of Africa. It's a bit of a thick tome, so it's quite heavy to carry. But one doesn't actually need to bring your own book, because our guides will have very, very good bird books in their vehicles. But I will have to make a note of that and actually come back to you on who the author is. Some of the bird books, the Birds of East Africa book is actually available as an online version, which is great. And I think that's the Stevenson one. rather than the Zimmerman one. And that's actually you can have on your phone or on your tablet. You get all of the information, the pictures that you normally get, and the maps, and it has the advantage of playing bird calls as well. So yes, please do bring that over. But if you find these bird books are too heavy, then we have them available here in our vehicles.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And could you elaborate on the electricity situation? Is there electricity to use in the tents? Is it available all day, or how does that work?
Mm-hmm. So our camps are all solar powered. There's slightly different configurations in all of the camps, but all of the camps have charging facilities where you can charge up your all of your electronics. And our vehicles also have inverters in them, so they have charging points as well. In some of our camps, you'll have sockets by your bedside so that you can, have phones and everything plugged in, and cameras charging, at any point. Other camps, the charging is a little bit more limited, so you might need to do that in the mess tent. If anybody requires power overnight, for example, for a CPAP machine or something like that, we are able to provide that, even if that means having a generator running for part of the evening to back up our solar systems. But there is ample power for charging. None of the solar systems is able to handle any sort of high wattage things. So hair dryers, curlers, anything like that, it don't work on safari in our camps. But there is ample power available to everybody.
Fantastic. Next here, could you elaborate on the showers and toilets? Are they all individual in their own tent, or are some of them shared, or how does that work too?
They're all individual in their own tents. So each of our tents, which is set up either as two single beds or a king size bed, then has a bathroom section at the back where there is separate toilet and shower areas with curtains across both of them. And so, yes, so you don't need to leave your tent at all to shower. In some of the camps, which are the seasonal ones, one needs to arrange showers that are brought in that bucket style. So that's something that the expedition leaders and the managers in the camps will arrange. And the water is available pretty much all the time. We just need sort of 10, 15 minutes or so notice. But we typically will arrange that with everybody. So if we come back in at the end of an afternoon game drive, showers will be ready in all of the tents, and then everybody can get cleaned up and then come through for sundowners around the fire and before going through for dinner. There's enough water for everybody to wash hair if you've got slightly longer hair as well, and teams always there to refill water if necessary. Some of the camps have actually got piped water all the way through, so hot water on demand anytime, Mara East being an example of that. So yeah, that's how the showers work there.
Thank you for that explanation. Next here, we have definitely all seen videos and photos of major vehicle jams at wildlife sightings. How does our team avoid those situations whenever possible?
It's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked me that, because it's really something I should have mentioned earlier when I was talking about how sort of remote our camps are. It is unfortunate that there are some areas, particularly of the Maasai Mara and the Serengeti, that can get very, very busy. However, where we've located our camps are in the more remote spots, more difficult to access, with fewer vehicles. And so it lends itself to, when we do find sightings, that we typically have them to ourselves for longer, or with perhaps just one or two other vehicles from other like-minded camps that are equally respectful of wildlife. To be honest, there are times when we do see big groups of vehicles and there's something there. I think that pretty much all of our expedition leaders and guides would rather actually go and find something that, that we go and find our own sighting that we can actually enjoy, rather than becoming part of that melee. We enjoy when we're out in the bush, being able to enjoy our wildlife sightings, and in a way that the wildlife is undisturbed and so forth. So I hope that answers that question. But the real answer is that because of where we've put our camps, we are in more remote areas where the volume of vehicles is lower, and we regularly are having sightings just to ourselves.
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you so much for that. I do have a question here, and I'll just go ahead and answer it. Somebody's asking how big the groups are, and this trip is limited to 12 people. So just FYI for anybody else who's wondering that. Let's continue here. For binoculars, do you have any recommendations on maybe focal lengths or brands or anything like that that you would, if anybody needs binoculars, what do you think?
I'm a big fan of 10 by 42s. So those are typically a sort of a good mid-size range, that's size of binoculars that's very easy to move around with. Typically not too heavy either. I think if you go with anything smaller than that in terms of magnification, anything smaller than 10, then you might not have the detail that you want. And if you go with anything smaller in terms of field of view than 42, so smaller binos than that, it can sometimes be a little bit limiting in what you pick up. Binoculars are really, really helpful, and I can't really stress how important they are on a safari. It's often on our game drives, we'll just drive out to a point and stop and just take it all in, enjoy the surroundings. And really, just by sitting there and starting to scan the area with your binoculars, you might pick something up that you'd otherwise miss, whether it's a group of antelope looking in a certain direction, or birds flying around in a certain way. And then when we do see something, it's an opportunity to view from a distance without sort of going in too close and disturbing what's going on. So really, really, really important. In terms of brand, there is a wide range to suit every budget. But there are good binoculars available from sort of $150, $200 that are really, really good. Our guides use a brand called Vortex, which I know is readily available there. And that's something that I find to be very good. But I'm sure adventure specialists can provide more information. So if anybody's got any specific questions of that, they can send those through, and then we can give some more advice.
Yeah, and if anyone hasn't realized, we do have a gear store on the NatHab website, and I'm looking at it right now, and we have 3 different binoculars there. If anybody wants to check them out and see what we have, if you are in the market for that, and you can even get some bino harnesses, which is really convenient. So you can just lift them up, and you're looking across the plains there. So. Alrighty, let's continue on. For somebody that might not be able to step up into the vehicle, are there stools available?
So that's a very good question. Our vehicles have actually all got doors in the side. And so there is either a fold down ladder that can help step up, or we have little fold out stools just to create easy to manage steps to go in. And our expedition leaders and guides are also on hand all the time to help everybody in and out of vehicles.
Perfect. Is there a chance to see Mount Kilimanjaro on this trip?
There is a chance to see Mount Kilimanjaro at the end of the trip when we come back into Arusha. We're staying at the end of a place called Ngorongoro Mountain Lodge, which is a lovely old German farmhouse just on the way out towards the Kilimanjaro International Airport. And from there, you've got great views across to the mountain if it's clear. We're not actually safaring anywhere within sight of Mount Kilimanjaro. However, at the start of the safari, when we're in Old Pejeta, we're very, very close to Mount Kenya. The Conservancy is at the foot of Mount Kenya, so you get great views of that in the Aberdare mountain range.
Fantastic. Next here, do you have any shoe recommendations?
Um, Yeah, I mean, one has to be able to cope with both cold and hot weather. And it's good to have a rugged pair that you're happy to walk in. They don't necessarily have to be sort of over ankle hiking boots. Um, we're not doing any difficult trekking or anything like that during this trip, but a lot of guests who come over might add on, some sort of extension to their trip, and particularly if you're going off into Uganda or Rwanda and going to try and trek after chimpanzees and gorillas, then you will definitely need some more sturdy walking boots. In addition to sort of something that one that can walk in, some closed shoes that are good for that. It's handy to have a pair of lighter sneakers or sandals that you can also move around. And especially if you're in a vehicle and it's a hot day, it's nice to wear sandals rather than closed shoes. One thing I would say about sandals is it's good to have a sturdy sole. We have a lot of acacia trees around that some of them have got very, very big thorns, and you don't want one of those going through the sole of your shoe. Also, certain sandals, things like Keen and stuff like that, Keens, they have a little bit of a wraparound at the front that protects your foot from any little thorns or stones coming in as well. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, it's very helpful. Could you elaborate a little bit more at Sundowners? What is usually provided there when it comes to food and drinks? What are there cocktails, beer, or no alcohol? How does that work?
Yeah, so in all of the camps, we've got a well-stocked bar with both alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks. Sundowners themselves, I guess, a very sort of colonial origin, generally started around, or were centered around gin and tonics. So that's definitely one thing on offer, and we typically in the different camps will have a range of different gins from both internationally recognized brands as well as some other more uniquely African ones. We carry a range of soft drinks from juices through different sodas, both diet and normal. We've got some different beers which vary according to the country that you're in. It might be Tusker, which is our Kenyan beer, or Serengeti or Safari, which are our Tanzanian ones. We have a good range of wines, different wines in all of the camps. We like to carry South African wines, just to give everybody a taste of that, but there's usually some European or South American ones as well, and then a decent array of spirits. As I mentioned before, at Sundowners typically is there are some snacks that go around, whether it's a few little bitings that's come out of the kitchen that chefs freshly made, or something we've carried in the vehicles because we're going to have Sundowners out there. Sundowners can happen every day. They don't need to. It depends on where we are. It depends on what you've seen, what the sighting is. We certainly don't, move away from a great wildlife sighting to go and have a drink in the evening. But if you found a pride of lions that are, you found them in the late afternoon and they're beginning to stretch and wake up and just start moving around and groom and so forth, it's actually quite nice to be able to enjoy a cool cocktail whilst you're watching them from the vehicle. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, Joe. And we are coming near the end of the hour here, and there's still lots of questions. So, everybody, if you are looking to book this trip, or I even got some photo expedition questions, I recommend reaching out to the adventure specialist team. They'll be more than happy to review these trips with you to see if it's a right fit for you and which one for you to join. And then, if you already are booked, and have questions, the concierge team will be more than happy to get you prepared. I have lots of vaccination type questions and money questions, so they would be more than happy to walk you through that. So everyone, I think that is what we'll wrap it up at right now. And Joe, I would like to turn it to you for any last closing comments.
And thanks so much, Brooke. I hope you've all found this interesting and helpful in planning your trip, and we're looking forward to welcoming you out to East Africa in the near future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today, Joe. And I'd like to thank everyone who tuned in. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.